Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy. Today, I'm going to give you a really simple and basic rundown of OrcaSlicer. Now, this video is primarily for those who have the Flashforge Adventurer 5M or 5M Pro 3D printers, and you're using Flash Print, but you're thinking about making a change and giving OrcaSlicer a try because it's been recommended by a lot of people as well as by Flashforge themselves. But even if you don't have that particular 3D printer, don't worry, because pretty much everything that I'm going to show you is exactly the same no matter what printer you happen to have. All right, so first, you need to know where to get it. And here's where you can get it. Now, OrcaSlicer doesn't have a website like OrcaSlicer.com or .org or anything like that. You have to get the files from GitHub because OrcaSlicer is an open source 3D slicing software. So that means that the code is open to the community to do whatever it is that they want to do with it. And there are official releases and then there are beta releases. So here is the official release, the latest one, which is currently version 1.9.1. I'll leave a link to this in the description so that you can find it. And what you do is you go all the way down to the assets, and then you choose which one that you want. If you're on Windows, then you're going to want to choose this one right here that says OrcaSlicer Windows Installer, and then has the version number right there, .exe. If you are on Mac, these are the Mac files that are up here. And if you want to download, say, the beta version, something that's not officially released, that's not considered stable, you can easily do that as well. So this page here is for the OrcaSlicer nightly builds, and this is the pre-release. And the latest one currently is version 2.0.0. So it's pretty much the same thing. You can go down here to the Windows installer, or if you have a Mac, you can get the Mac version of it, and then you'll be able to go from there. Now, when you go to install OrcaSlicer, if you're on Windows, you're probably going to get a warning from Windows saying that it's blocked the installation because it doesn't trust the software. It thinks it may be malicious. Don't worry about it. Just force it to run anyway because it's not malware. But thank you, Windows, for trying to protect us in this case. So once you get it all installed, you're going to be coming to a screen that looks similar to this. This screen says printer selection, and this is where you choose your printer. Now, in this case, we're going to be working with the Flashforge Adventurer 5M. So what you can do is just type in the name of the printer. In this case, you can type in F, and then it automatically comes down here to Flashforge. And here we go. Here's the Adventurer 5M, and then here is the Adventurer 5M Pro. There's two different profiles that they have available for this. One with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle that comes with the printer. Then there's another one here for a 0.6 millimeter nozzle that you can purchase separately for about $40. If you have the Adventurer 5M Pro, you get both of those nozzles in the box already. So you can just go ahead and check both of these boxes. And then when you're done, you just hit confirm. I currently only had the 0.4 millimeter nozzle profile, but now I'm thinking about getting a 0.6 nozzle. So I'm just going to go ahead and check this and hit confirm. So here I am on the main screen with the 0.4 millimeter nozzle profile. If I wanted to change to the 0.6 profile that I also just selected, all I have to do is click on this, scroll down to the system presets and choose the 0.6 millimeter nozzle, click on that. And if you made any changes at all, it's going to ask you if you want to move those same changes over to the new nozzle. I didn't really do much. I just changed the infill and then I changed the support structures, but I'm just going to say transfer. And now I'm on the 0.6 millimeter nozzle profile. But since the 0.4 is what the printer comes with, I'm just going to move right back to the 0.4. All right, so as far as filament goes, you can select the different types of generic filament profiles that Flashforge has for OrcaSlicer. And the way that you can do that is by going down to this filament section here, give it a click. And then if you only have just one profile available, you can just go down to here that says add/remove filament. And that's going to open up another box here, and you'll see that there's different filaments to choose from. Now, you can ignore the Creality and the Elegoo stuff because that's probably not going to be there for you, but you can see here the different default Flashforge filament profiles. This is for high-speed PLA, generic PETG, PETG carbon fiber, PLA, PLA carbon fiber, PLA silk, and generic TPU. You select each one that you want, and then you can hit confirm. And when you do that, you'll see those filament profiles loaded down here under system presets. And when you click them, it's going to change how the filament is going to be used in the printer. So just for a quick example, under the Flashforge generic PLA, I can just give this a click right here on the right side to edit the preset. And you see here is what some of the default profiles are going to be. It has the nozzle temperature of 220 degrees Celsius. It has the bed temperature at 55 for the first layer and 50 for the second layer. You can click on the advanced settings and it tells you a little bit more that it is doing here. It tells you what the max volumetric speed is for this particular profile, and then, you know, just all this other additional information that you probably won't need at first. But if you kind of just take a look at the basic temperatures here, this is what they have for generic PLA, 220 and 50. But if you were to change to something like the generic TPU profile, for example, and then look at those filament settings, you'll see that they've changed. Now, the recommended nozzle temperature for the max is 250. The first layer and the other layers is now 235. And then the bed temperature is at 45. And if you look at the advanced settings, you go all the way down to the max volumetric speed is now 3.5 millimeters cubed per second, which is much slower than regular PLA because TPU needs to be printed much slower than PLA. So it pretty much sets you up right out the gate for you to get printing with different types of materials. And then as you see what the results are, you can just go and make any tweaks that you might want to make to this profile and save it as something custom, so you can go back and always have those settings available. I'm going to set it up here for my high-speed PLA profile that I made, and we can continue looking down at these options here. Now, this is just the regular 0.2 millimeter layer height profile. That's the only thing that's going to be there, so we don't need to do anything about that. And then if you look at the basic settings, because I just clicked this to advanced, but if you're just looking at the basic settings, this is all that you're going to have access to. You have the layer height that you can choose for the first layer and every other layer. You have a seam position that you can change. You're probably not going to be messing with that at all. The precision option for precise wall, again, probably not going to need it. Walls and surfaces, you just leave this stuff at default. Not something that you really need to worry about right now. So really, if you change anything over here, it's probably just going to be the layer height, depending on what you're trying to print. So the layer height just basically means the lower your layer height, the slower your print speeds are going to be, but you're going to get higher quality. And the opposite is true as well. If you have a higher layer height, then your prints are going to print faster, but the quality is going to be a little bit less. So how do you know how high and how low you can go? Is by going up here to the printer section here, click on this square box for editing the preset. And under the extruder option, if you select the advanced tab, you'll see here are the layer height limits for this particular 0.4 millimeter nozzle. We can go as low as 0.08. It says that it's the lowest printable layer height for the extruder, and you can go all the way up to 0.28. What happens if you try to go beyond that? Let's just do that. Let's say I wanted to do 0.3. OrcaSlicer tells me that it's exceeding the layer height limits for the extruder. All right, so you just want to keep it within the acceptable range, which is between 0.08 and 0.28. The next option is strength. Now, this is really just going to be for you changing your infill percentage and the wall loops. The top and bottom shelves, in my experience, I haven't need to mess with these at all. But when it comes to infill, depending on what you want to print, if you want it to be a more, solid structure, you would increase the infill. And if you don't want that, you can lower the infill. Then you can also change the pattern, the infill pattern. I have it here on gyroid, but by default it's going to be on grid. I've used grid infill for the majority of things I've ever printed, but as I'm trying to learn more about the different types of infill, I'm told that the problem with the grid infill is the lines cross themselves and it can lead the nozzle to scrape along the grid, which may potentially not print loose. So that's why, one of the reasons why gyroid is one of the preferred infill options. So you can just give it a shot, give it a try and see which one you like the best. So I'm trying to do gyroid right now. Here's the infill density. By default, it's at 15%. If you want to go out and print something, sometimes the person who made it will tell you which infill that you can use, but most of the time you'll be fine by using the default setting, 15-20% unless stated otherwise. Next is going to be the support option. If you're printing something that needs supports, this is where you would go. You would click on Enable Supports. You would choose the type of supports that you want. Tree supports is a big favorite, or you can just do normal supports, but I like tree supports. And then you can also choose the threshold angle, which you most likely will never need to actually change. And then you can also say whether you want the supports to only be on the build plate or if you want the supports to go between spots on the model. And here are some other options that you don't really need to change. Just the filament for the supports for the Flashforge Adventurer 5M, that won't be necessary. And then the last tab is going to be others. So here's the bed adhesion for the skirt loops. It's going to be that line of filament that goes in a rough shape of what your print's going to be, just to purge the filament, get it nice and prime so that things can be smooth when it actually starts printing the object that you want. 2 skirt loops is going to be the default. I leave it like that. I leave the skirt height just the way it is. Brims, you usually don't need them depending on what you're printing. A brim is just basically going to be a thin layer of filament that your print is going to stick to help it stick to the bed more. And when you're done, you can just peel it off and tear it off. Prime tower, not going to really need it. Flush options, not really going to need it. And here are the special modes. Ooh, we'll get into these in a second. But the print sequence, you can go by layer or by object. So that means that if you're printing more than one thing at the same time, you can change this option so that it can print both of them simultaneously, or you can choose to just print one thing at a time. So it finishes one object before moving on to the next object. And that can be really helpful just in case one of those objects fails. So if the first object fails, you'll be able to cancel the print before you waste too much filament. It'll be a shame if you got to the very end of a multi-object print only to have one of them fail, and then you'll have to cancel the whole thing and start all over. So that's something you might want to keep in mind if you're printing more than one thing on the build plate. Spiral vase is really when you want to make things that are like vases where there's nothing in the middle, but it just builds up the walls on the side. And then fuzzy skin is just an aesthetic feature. It gives your prints a rough texture, basically. It's just for looks. So that's pretty much all of the basic settings. You can click on the advanced tab and you see that you have all of these extra options here if you wanted to use them. Most of the time you won't need to use them or change any of these. It's something that you'll just kind of learn as time goes on. But for the most part, especially if you're just coming from Flash print, you don't need to do that. So you can just turn off the advanced settings. So let's look at the process of actually slicing something. So what I have here is a nozzle storage box that was designed by someone from the community. I'll leave a link to this in the description as well. And then when you put something down here on the build plate, you'll see that you have these options up top that you're going to be using to help you out along the way. So this first option up here is called add. This is just when you just add a file to the build plate. You can drag it into here, or you can just click on add, select your file, open, and then it plops down on the build plate. The second one is for adding a plate. So let's say that you want to print multiple different objects on different build plates. You can do that. So you'll have two build plates here. So let's say you got one part here, then you have another part here, and you can, just kind of move things around and just do whatever you want. Most of the time, you're just going to just use one build plate at a time. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this plate, but you do have that option. You can right click on your mouse to drag the whole plate around, and then you can left click and hold to make it go in 360 degrees and get the angle that you want. Next, here is the auto orient button, and this can be useful if you want to get the optimal position for this particular object or any object that you might have, because sometimes it might be slightly off the build plate. Sometimes it might not be oriented in the best way to print. So this is just a way for OrcaSlicer to just sort of help you out and give you what it believes is the best orientation. When I click it, it's not going to do anything because this is just completely flat. This is the best orientation, but if you're having trouble positioning your object, just hit that and see what it does for you. Arrange is for when you have multiple objects and you want to get the optimal position for printing. So you would click on this and it will arrange those multiple objects on the build plate in a way that it believes is most optimal for printing. It will do it in a way that will avoid the nozzle crashing into one of those objects, and OrcaSlicer will tell you if there's a risk for doing that. And if it does, then you can just go to the auto arrange and it'll position those objects so that you will not have to worry about that issue. Next is split into objects, something that you most likely will not need to do, but if you wanted to, you can. This says number currently selected objects number 2. So you can choose to split these if you want. So this was just one solid piece, but by clicking that button, it split it into 2. And also check this out. If I had these like really close to each other, I can just go to auto orient or auto arrange, and it will position it in what it believes is going to be the best way to print it. So that's how that function works. All right, so next we have variable layer height, something that you don't need to worry about here. This is move, so just moving your objects around. Next is going to be for rotating, where you can drag these colored arrows along the appropriate axes and rotate it to your liking. The next one is going to be for scale, make it bigger, make it smaller. And you have the uniform scale selected by default so that all of the sides will be able to be scaled appropriately. So if I only wanted this to be half size, I would pick 50, and then the whole thing goes down by 50%. But we don't want that. We want a full size nozzle box. So we're going to bring it right back up to 100. Next is going to be lay on face. So this is useful if you want to lay the object on a particular side and you don't want to have to fuss with the different rotation options. When you click that, it highlights these parts that you can click in white, and it'll basically just flop it on that particular side. So now it's upside down. If I wanted it to be face down, I would click like that. Now it's face down. If I wanted it to be normal, I would just click on the bottom, and there it is back to its original position. So that's a quick way to position things the way that you want. Next up, we have support painting. I'll show you that on another object. Next is seam painting. Again, something that you really won't need to do to paint the seams. Embossing, you can put some text on there if you want. So I can just say, hello. And you can kind of see it like right there. And then next is the measuring tool, which can also be really useful, especially if you're trying to scale something specifically to fit something that you are wanting to use it for. So you can just click on an object, click on the measuring option here, And let's say I wanted to see how wide this box is. So I can start right here at this corner, click it once, and then I can go over to this corner here, click it twice. And right there, it tells me that this is 101 millimeters wide. So that can be really, really useful. We're trying to get some precise measurements for a particular object. All right, so that's pretty much it. So when you are satisfied with everything and you want to go ahead and slice it, just click on Slice Plate. It's going to do its thing down here at the bottom. And then you'll see here that most of the time is going to be taken up with the sparse infill. That's going to be 31.5% of the print time, and then just a breakdown of everything here. And when you're done, you can hit the Export G-code file button, save it to your USB stick or save it to your computer, wherever you want it to be, and then you're done. Now, the last option that I want to show you is the support painting. And this Magneto helmet here, it will be a good example for that. So I just drug this in, and by default, you see how it's raised off the bed in this position here? What we can do is click on this, and then we can just go to the auto orient option, click that, and then it sets the helmet down so that now it's laying as flat as it can. All right, so a helmet like this, you are definitely going to need supports. So if I just click on Enable Support and just let it do everything automatically and slice the plate, this is what we're going to get. So this helmet, which I scaled down 50% by the way, will take 3 hours and 45 minutes to print. And here are all of the tree supports that it generated. Now, you can print it like this and it's going to be fine, but we can save some time and some filament by optimizing this ourselves. All right, so just take special note of the tree supports that are inside of the helmet in the middle. You see how that's going up through the middle and it is done at this point. We're going to try to reduce that. So instead of using 138 grams of filament and this taking 3 hours and 45 minutes, we're going to try to get that down. All right, so let's go back to the prepare menu. And we're going to go to the option right here that says support painting. You click on that. And then we can just literally paint on where we want supports to be. And we can also paint where we don't want supports to be. In this case, I'm going to say where I don't want supports to be. So if I zoom in, we can take a look under the model, and everything that's red means that that is where the auto supports are going to go. But when it comes to helmets, a lot of the time you don't need to support the inside of helmets because that's some place that people aren't going to be looking. And how the nozzle works is going to be going around and around and around in a tighter circle. So it's going to be able to finish the top of the helmet, but the inside on the top is just going to look a little bit funky. But no one's going to see that. So you can save time and material by blocking it out. And the way that we can do that is we go to the pen size here. And if the pen size is really small, we only get this tiny little pointer here. But if we bring it up to as high as we can get it, the circle is much bigger. Now I can right click on my mouse and I am just going to paint over where I don't want these supports to be. If I wanted to put supports there, I would left click and it would turn it green, but we don't want that. So I'm just going to make a nice wide circle around here. And now with the auto supports still enabled for the tree supports, I'm going to re-slice the plate. So now you see that we got it down to 2 hours and 43 minutes. So we shaved an entire hour off of the print and we're now using 93.10 grams of filament. So we saved time and we saved filament. And the big support that was going to go in the middle, it's no longer there because I blocked it out. And if you go over here to the right side, you can look at how it's going to print layer by layer. We'll grab this plus button and drag it all the way down. And it goes up, 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 all the way until we get to the top. And even though there's nothing supporting the very top of the head like that, it's okay because everything else is nice and supported. And if you go back and you decide, oh, I want to add some supports here or there, then you can just go back to the painting function. And that's how you can use it to save yourself some time, filament, and thus money. So that's it. That is a brief, basic rundown of OrcaSlicer. It is a slicer that's recommended by Flashforge. So if you are using Flashprint and you want to try something different, maybe you're not happy with it, OrcaSlicer is something that is updated a lot more often and it has more features. And overall, I just think that it's a better slicer than Flashprint. Currently, you can't use it for Wi-Fi printing, at least not on these official builds. There is a forked version of it that someone else developed that does allow you to print over Wi-Fi, but that's currently not available in the official versions just yet. But if that's something that is not a big deal for you, then you can just use this to just do your regular slicing to your USB stick and put it into the printer and you can print that way. So that's all for now, everybody. Remember, if you want to see some more videos about the Flashforge Adventurer 5M, I did create a playlist. So all the videos, including this one, is going to be located there. And any other video that I make about this printer in the future is going to be placed in that playlist as well. So be sure that you subscribe if you want to see more videos about the printer in particular. And I'll always have more coming. So thank you all so much for watching again. Till next time, take care of yourselves. I'll speak to you soon.